is coping when it comes to the different dimensions that I mentioned earlier. Well, when it comes to the first thing, of course, you know now, if you would like to go to the Middle East, you have to have your, I would say, cyber unit, so to speak, technologically speaking, and, of course, cultural translator. Now, this is not enough by itself. A week ago, what was that? I mean, last Friday, a guy just left his home, leaving behind a post saying that he is going to take revenge on behalf of Al-Aqsa, which is the mosque in Temple Mount, and this resulted in the slaughtering, viciously and cruelly, of members of family in kind of a settlement called Khalamish. The family was sitting to the Shabbat dinner, and this is actually what happened there. The guy was living behind a post which was full of Quranic verses with their puritanic interpretation. So it depends on how fast can you trace that or follow that and get kind of a warning in advance. It is becoming something which is very, very epidemic. We do talk about the lonely wolf. The lonely wolf syndrome means that, in sharp contrast to what we had in the 20th century, you know, in the 20th century, okay, Black September, show me where their bases are. Bader Meinhof, show me where actually these people come from. What we have now is people coming from nowhere. It's from their computer. If they are being hit by the virus, it could take just 1 hour to get out and create and to commit some atrocities all over the place. And you know that this state, the British Island actually, the British Kingdom, has experienced that, France has experienced that, some other states, and of course, this is part of the new modus operandi. When you deal with terrorism, you don't have the basic modus operandi you held in the 20th century. You are not going to intercept. You are not going actually to find the origins in terms of logistics, in terms of territory. What you have here is kind of a totally new challenge. So you have to have kind of a, you have to acquire what I call virtual wisdom. You have to know what to do with the mass of information you have. Again, how to categorize that and how to interpret that. This is a very tough mission, and it would be much more serious with years to come. It is not going to get back. It's moving ahead fastly. And if we are going to snooze, we are going to lose. So what we have here is kind of a must, and we have to create kind of a research agenda that would help us out with that. And I'm happy to say that, you know, in the academia we have that, and we are being well, I would say, sought after when it comes to that, because we have kind of a unit in the academia which is definitely specializing not only in the technology, because this is beyond our scope of expertise, but again, cultural translators. Remember that. We have to get closer and closer to the mind of the other, to have kind of a clue of what is to be found in the back of his mind, or her mind. Otherwise, that would be very, very, it would become impossible actually to trace that and to follow. Second, state and religion. You know, for us, I mean, for Israelis, state and religion is also kind of a very heavy thing. In that sense, Israel is a Middle Eastern state. And if we would like to learn or glean kind of a lesson from what's going on, we have to make sure that we have sort of an accommodation or a compromise between state and religion. We cannot let, actually, ultra-Orthodox radicals or whatever, to turn religion into something by which to make everything else null and void. One of the main, actually, messages we do send to the Israeli society, especially these days, especially as Israel is a bunch of subcultures. It's not a monolith. And you know, there is no monolith. Monolith is something which is based on a wishful thinking. All of us the same, all of us equal. Again, this is a pie in the sky. There is no such thing in such society. We have to be actually aware of our defects, deal with them, cope with them, and basically a healthy state in society is that the one who is pretty familiar with all these disadvantages, with all these actually problems, and know how to deal with that and know how to cope with that. The most important thing, maybe, geopolitically speaking, is that with the transition from the 20th century to the 21st century, Israel seems, or the Palestinian-Israeli conflict seems not to be as instrumental as it was in the 20th century. In the 20th century, it went without saying that if you would like to solve out the problems of the Middle East, what you have to deal with is the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. That was sort of a master key, which prevented people from seeing the other dimensions of the Middle East. Israel was taken as a monolith to be understood through the lens of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, period. Not as a society, not as a bunch of human beings, basically kind of a block that should be understood only in line with the equation of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Now, I'll put it carefully. Whoever would like actually to deal with Middle Eastern problems cannot ascertain that the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is the A and Z in the Middle East. Why? We have many, many other conflicts that came to the fore, ended up with millions being displaced or fleeing. 1 million people have been slaughtered, as we said before, and it goes on and on. Humanitarian crisis, which is unprecedented in the Middle East, happened in the recent years here. And Israel is not part of the game regarding that. So now, there are people who cannot bear the notion that something in the Middle East problems are going to be explained without Israel in it. So they keep actually dealing with the same notion of chercher la femme. And that's very, very simple. Now, if you try to ask me actually what we have here is again kind of a real break with tradition, disintegrated states, and we have to change our research agenda. What Israel should do is just step by step, be patient, and make sure that people actually coming up with the right proportions by which to measure processes in the Middle East. Now, what happened when it comes to the what I call ad hoc alliances, everybody for itself, bits and pieces, is that Israel had never been that approached by Arab states as is the case today. And it's not because Israel is the cup of tea of somebody. Not at all. It is because of the convergence of mutual interests. Example. If Egypt, for example, has to cope with Muslim brothers from within, and Muslim brothers is basically the mother of the Hamas movement in Gaza. And at the same time, that same Egyptian government has to deal with lunatics of ISIS coming from the Sinai Peninsula. And it goes without saying that Muslim Brothers and ISIS are also enemies of Israel. So there you have kind of a wide common denominator between Egypt and Israel, maybe to be based on the notion of my enemy's enemy can be my best friend. This is exactly what we have now. Jordan, an ally of Israel, again, not because Israel is its cup of tea. Jordan is full of Palestinians. When it comes to the streets, there is kind of a real animosity toward Israel. But when it comes to the Hashemite family, King Abdullah, everybody knows that we should not let him be toppled because of the spillover effects that could come from the no man's lands in Syria and Iran into Jordan and into the West Bank. So if you take Abu Mazen, King Abdullah, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, even Salman, the king of Saudi Arabia, the Moroccan king, he's far away, but all these, let's say, how shall I put it, moderate, well, this is relatively speaking, I mean, moderate Sunni Arab states, this is how they are being depicted by the media. Most of them are pro-Western, and most of them do expect the new administration in Washington to be really, really different than its predecessor. And I guess it is, but to what extent we don't know yet. The thing is that there is a bunch of states here who are both anti-ISIS and anti-Iran and anti-Muslim brothers. Let me name them. Saudi Arabia and the Gulfian states, excluding Qatar, which is kind of a phenomenon by itself. Egypt, Jordan, I'm talking about the ruling elites. I dare say actually some states in the Maghreb, especially Morocco, to some extent Tunisia, but they are really beyond the scope. And Israel. So here comes an alliance which is not based on peace, and peace has become a word that we should be very careful when using that in military terms. Peace is a true friendship. Peace is based on true intimacy. This is not what we have in the Middle East. So first of all, let's confine ourselves, if and when, to settlement, to agreements. I think that Israel, as other states in the region, while trying actually to find the recipe or the modus operandi by which to better your future survival, and this is how I would put it, there is no once and for all. There is no Messiah who is going to become either from DC or from another capital city in the world with kind of a formula by which to solve out the problem of the Middle East. So many hands, plethora of orientations. You can't have one layer with which to build it up and correct actually what should be repaired and what should be corrected here. Not at all. Bits and pieces, again. No blocks. Don't come up with, show me the dichotomy. Where is the black and where is the white? Because this is what our mind is desperately looking for. Give me the two blocks where I could categorize actually the so complicated reality I'm facing with. What is good, what is bad? What is black, what is white? No, we have a plethora of colors here. So many colors. And we should have kind of a clue by which to differentiate the so many and different colors we have here from each other. So basically, we have to learn further inquiry, be aware of these simplistic notions and slogans of the one time of the 20th century. Let's have peace. Let's have well-integrated Iraq. Let's go to Astana, Kazakhstan, and come up with peace in Syria. Well, this is something with which actually people are trying to deceive the public or leaders. You cannot say that you don't have a clue of what to do with one-time Iraq and Syria. So how are you going to persuade the world that you are still in charge and you will still have an idea of what to do? You send John Kerry back and forth to Jerusalem and Ramallah, not to Damascus, not to Baghdad, because nobody knows what to do with the mess there. How would I actually live behind the message that I'm dealing with things in the Middle East? I'll take actually the one good notion that is very clear to everybody, Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And make sure that everybody knows that John Kerry is not in DC because he is in Ramallah, or in Jerusalem, or in Tel Aviv. And he speaks to both Palestinians and Israelis, and behind the corner, how did you put that? 9 months or 10 months, we're going to have all this settled. In Arabic you say, بكرة في المشمش.
What's the translation?
Well,
yeah, that's right. I just want to hear it out.
In Hebrew you say תספר לסבתא. Tell to your grandmother.
I thought it was close to that.
But it has to do with the apricot and the way actually it is being sold the day after actually, which is Bukra fil Mishmish. I'm going actually to just deal with the apricot of tomorrow, which is not going actually to be eaten by human beings because it is just distorted. Is it right, Rami?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Rami is my Egyptian guy. Bukra fil Mishmish is an Egyptian notion.
It's mean it will never happen.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, this is the metaphor. But it's very, very important actually for us to make sure that we know what's going on. What we have here is kind of a situation where Israel is going to be blamed for almost everything, in spite of the basic notion that Israel is responsible for almost nothing in this Middle East. You can deal with Israel when it comes to the Palestinians, yes. There is a conflict between Israelis and Palestinians, yes. They should deal with that actually by themselves, yes. But that's it. Palestinians or Arabs couldn't care less about the destiny of Palestinians. You know who says that? Palestinians themselves, not me. This is what they tell me, my Palestinian friends. And we do meet people in Ramallah, in Tel Aviv, in the university. We talk about everything, excluding politics, of course. We are dear friends when it comes to every dimension. But I want you actually to be aware of that. There is kind of a bitter animosity within the Arab folk, mistrust, kind of a bitter suspicion whenever you go. And basically when Palestinians do look at themselves, asking themselves why actually we hadn't been managed to get kind of a state for our own. The anti-Israeli would say, would put it clearly, it is because of Israel. Palestinians would say that their leadership failed to react or to respond in real time. And they snoozed. As we say, if you snooze, you lose. I don't think that two-state solution is something which is feasible anymore. But this is my opinion. The whole world is speaking about two-state solution. Why? 20th century. There are many Israelis who talk about two-state solution. Why? Let us say they are retired generals, mainly, who came from the 90s, the Oslo Agreement, which was a real failure. Now many Israelis would say that loud and clear. And in order to make myself relevant, in order to consider myself and persuade myself that I'm not that old and I'm not that irrelevant, I would renew the relevancy of what I said 30 years ago. This is unbelievable. But it has to do with the facts of human beings. I guess that we shouldn't put the blame on nobody actually doing that, because we are also human beings. We just have to just beware of that. And we should know actually when our time has gone to be that relevant when it comes to the changing reality. Well, this is the important thing. Now let me show you some stuff that is coming through the media, just to know that, you know, I thought of having that because when I was presenting in Arabic to a group of young Arab officers in Rome. It was the NATO school there, NATO. And it was pretty nice presentation with a lively discussion. But there was a crisis. And the crisis came when I mentioned Daesh or ISIS in that presentation. And there was an ongoing resentment and cries coming from the audience. And one of them came up with the saying that you shouldn't talk about ISIS. And I said, why? Because everybody knows who stands behind ISIS creation. And I said, who's to be found there? It is an American Israeli creature who was installed in the Middle East in order to sow horrors and to make Muslims fighting each other. Now I have to tell you, I have many Arab friends, but to some point I cannot accept what I call the conspiracy theory, which is not skyrocketing and getting higher and higher because of the virtual media. Now you know, actually we do find in Israel many young people, Muslims, Arabs, taking a knife and stabbing Jews. Why? Because they saw in the internet, Facebook, whatever, there were some news about the Jews burning or setting Al-Aqsa ablaze, I mean just in fire. Who told you that? It was there in the computer. Of course, it's kind of a Photoshop being created in order to make people understand that this is what's going bad. It is so combustible, so dangerous. You can poison in 1 minute the mind of so many young people that we have to know how to cope with that. Otherwise, we're going to have disaster after disaster in that world in the 21st century. Let me show you some stuff that I just, you know, even randomly took from the, I had it. Okay. Here you go. This is Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. He has a CIA membership card. ISIS made in America, made in Israel. And of course, this is a conspiracy theory which says that, you know, the elders, the protocols of the elders of Zion are coming to the fore, and you can explain almost everything by using that. Here is Netanyahu. He is visiting the injured soldiers of ISIS in Jabhat al-Nusra, which is kind of a branch of Al-Qaeda. And again, this is basically another conspiration of Israel. Look at this, United States, Israel. What we have here is everybody, Takfiri, Nusra, Daesh, Qaeda, and Wahhabism. So this is basically not something that is to be found on real time and basically kind of a reality by itself. It is also concocted by the vicious Christian-Jewish alliance or American Jewish Israeli thing. Okay, what we have here. Here, basically, we are sitting back to back with the Iranians. So you understand that this is kind of a Sunni Puritanist interpretation of what's going on in the Middle East. The Shiites are cooperating with the Israelis, the Jews. The Jews took Palestine and the Julan, and the Iranians, their friends, took the disputed islands in the Gulf from the Sunni hands. And that goes on and on, of course. Of course, we have here some more items that are related to that. Okay, look at this. This is something that we just took from ISIS website. This is sort of an icon which says from the beginning, half of jihad is media. Again, half of jihad is media. This is kind of a sentence by which to epitomize the whole notion when it comes to ISIS. Look at this. This is, and I would like to show you actually the way ISIS poisoned the mind of so many. Remember actually what happened in Palmyra, in Tadmor. What is being said here actually that the world, the Western world, was so worried about the extinction of unique birds in Palmyra, but not with the extinction of people. So this is something by which to ironically put the way actually the West is looking at things. You are dealing with the athar, which is antiquities, but not with the insaniya, not with humanities, or humanity, yeah? Humanitarian suffering, maybe. Okay, so this is what I have to say here. And of course, there's a lot to be said. This is just the beginning. We are building up a research agenda, and we are being supported by many who would really like to start dealing with the problem, to name it, and to deal it by its own name. Not hiding behind the bush with irrelevant slogans, which keeps you under kind of a situation as if you have the knowledge of how to solve it out. We have to be very, very sure, 100%, that we are going to live behind kind of a safer world for our next generations. With the way it is being conducted, it is very dangerous because nobody does nothing for bettering our world. And I don't know if ISIS was defeated or ISIS has won. In my opinion, for the time being, ISIS has won. Because I would like to see kind of a real campaign by which to really cope with the virus, with the epidemic ramification of the virus. So we have a lot to do, each one of us in his own state, institute, family, neighborhood, whatever. But now we know, leaders are not going to change the world. If at all, it would come from the people themselves. Now, do the people know that? I'm not sure. Because people, in order to strip them of the responsibility, would blame the leaders. Well, we know who the leaders are. These are people under interrogations, sought after. They are doing their politics of survival more than anybody else, and they don't have time to really think about our future. This would be a sort of an infantile thinking to believe that the leader sitting there, what he has in mind is a future vision of this society on state 30, 40 years from now. Not at all. Politics of survival. And this is legitimate because they are politicians. They have to think that way. If we would have been there, maybe we would have thought the same way. I don't know. Haven't been there. So I think what we have to do is really, really something which is very, very important. First of all, it's a wake-up call for all of us. Wake up call. I know it sounds too dramatic or melodramatic, one would say. And I would accept that, of course. But here is the thing. If in this state, or in France, 200 years after the French Revolution, I taught in Menton, in the French Riviera, actually last summer. And some of my students, Menton is nearby Nice, of course, where in the Bastille Day, a French citizen of Muslim origin drove his car into the festivities, killing and murdering almost 87 people, most of them women and infants. You have to be there in Nice actually to see how the French are memorizing them. When the students in my class asked me, because I'm coming from the Middle East, I definitely should have some answers to that lunatic minds of people. They asked me actually about that, but they were not bewildered by the simple fact that people were killed or assassinated. What killed them is the simple fact that it had been done by a citizen like themselves. And they thought that citizenship by itself is enough to buy the immunity against such atrocities. Citizenship is wonderful as long as it makes the citizen treat himself as 100% loyal to the nation state he is part of. When a citizen is heating his own homeland, the whole notion of what citizen is being broken. So basically we have to reconstruct our understanding about what state, society, nation is. So subnational identities are coming to the fore. I'm not saying that this is the same in the Middle East, because in the Middle East we have hell, we have plethora of understandings. It is a Pandora's box that has been opened up. But what we have in West Europe is people, more often than not, identifying themselves with their religion or their ethnicity rather than with nation, with their nation. Very dangerous. Why? Because it hits and damages the very essence of Western neoliberalist ideology. That's all. Now, of course, there are many Westerners who would say loud and clear, it's nothing, as my friends in the French university did. It's just a wave. It's a passing phenomenon. No, it's not. These are not things to be actually described as passing phenomena. This is something that has to do with culture, identity, and memory. And this is not something to be passed away if you are not going to deal with that. If you are going to ignore that, and this is what the world is doing, it will become a catastrophe. Just like that. Take a lesson from what's going on in the Middle East. So ironically put, the Middle East for 200 years actually was to be shaped in line with Western standards, and models were actually imported or exported by the West to the Middle East. Democracy, parliamentary system, parties, election, all that stuff. What we have now is the opposite. In some way, and ironically put, the Middle East is exporting some negative viruses to the other parts of the world. And I dare say that I'm not sure that Western Europe or the United States do have a clue of how to deal with that. That's the problem. So the best way is to just say that it is not that serious. In a year or 2 years' time, we're going to have a different situation. It's just economic. We have actually to find kind of a different agenda with which actually to make them more committed to the states. I won't delve into too many details about that. You know, in Israel we also have some dreamers like that who do think that it's just to do this and that. And if you had done that before 20, 30 years ago, all of this wouldn't have happened. That is a very, very common explanation. I told them to do that 30 years ago. Who knows if what you told, who you told, nothing, but people are playing with that as if this is kind of a game. And of course, actually, we do commit, and we are committed to our tiny Israel. And I'm speaking now as an Israeli, not as an academician. Because this is a tiny state, 8 million people. Don't forget, 25% of them are Palestinians. Let me just repeat that because people tend to forget that. More often than not, I just been to Romania, and one of the commentators actually said, what's the real problem is 2 states for 2 people. All Palestinians go here, all Jews go there. I want you to know that in the case of 2-state solution, 25% of the citizens of Israel are Palestinians. And we should respect that, because we are a democracy. So we are a Jewish state, but at the same time, we have to think how to continue actually the sentiments and the rights of many Palestinians who are Israeli citizens. Of course, if they are going to respect their citizenship and be loyal to the state. Otherwise, nothing could happen. Problem. But just stick to the facts. 2 states for 2 people. Sounds very clean and net. But I was astonished and bewildered when I understood that those who adhere to the notion of 2 states, do not recognize the simple fact that under that agreement, 25% of the citizens of Israel ought to be Palestinians. And they are going actually to be squeezed in kind of an equation which is very difficult for them, because more often than not, their people are fighting the nation or the state, let's say. Who should I be loyal to? So, what I would like you actually just to, again, it's not to say who is necessarily the righteous part. It's not a blame game what I'm doing here. First of all, let's make sure we know what we are dealing with. And only thereafter actually try to start thinking of the situation. So I think I'll stop here, and if there are questions or...
So, you had a question before?
Oh yeah. First of all, thank you. Really, really amazing lecture. And my question is regarding Al-Ummah al-Islamiyya, the Islamic nation. We were talking about identities and this people who have like hybrid identities. This is what I call them. Hybrid identity means that you have multiple identities inside of you. Like for instance, this French person who is also Muslim, who is also from Algeria, and these are 3 identities, and he can choose which one he's going to use on a different stage of his life. So in terms of that, when Abdullah Azam is speaking about Al-Ummah al-Islamiyya, the Islamic nation, that when it's hurt on one side of it, all Muslims are compelled to do jihad and go and help that side of the nation that is hurt. He was saying that in terms of Afghanistan, during the war in Afghanistan. We are actually talking about one big nation. So where is this theory of primordial identities fits into that?
It's parallel.
It's parallel.
Can we have the... It's parallel to that, okay? So yeah, that's a very good question. Just let me make sure that maybe I should elaborate on that. What Abdullah Azam is actually basically the founder of Al-Qaeda, is the teacher of Osama bin Laden. And when it comes to ISIS, there is an elaboration on that, of course, because ISIS is trying actually to get this Ummah Islamiyya now and to just depict it as a caliphate, as was the case. But what I'm trying to say is that remember the map that talked about the gray spot, where we have this ISIS thing, this is, ISIS put it in a sarcastic notion, saying that this thing, that this thing is, you know, in Arabic they named it, here we go. See that? This was the boundary between Iraq and Syria. When there was a caliphate, there was no boundary. Here in Abu Kamal, ISIS actually ironically put the Sykes-Picot post as if it was kind of a concoction or a conspiracy to divide Muslims and name these people Iraqis, these people Syrians. There is no such thing. And this is called by ISIS Kasr al-Hudud, which means breaking up the boundaries, and all of them should become citizens or subjects of an Islamic notion. But the problem in the Middle East is that, again, this is not a dichotomy between Puritanists or... It's not a problem between, thank you, between Puritanists and, let's say, moderate. What we have here is on top of that the Kurds, primordial identity, coming from times immemorial, Alawites who are trying to rescue themselves, Druze, we didn't talk about that. They don't want to have a state of their own, but they have to have kind of a compromise with the incumbent. So who is the incumbent? When Bashar was weak, they looked for somebody else. When Bashar is stronger, they are trying actually to mend fences with Bashar. But basically, look at this. This is a plethora of minorities. Each one of them is not going to sell his merchandise for kind of a caliphate or something like that, if that means losing his own, you know, uniqueness. So at the same time, you are coming from down, and this is something that we have to just make sure. We do not move horizontal. No. We are not coming from the out and trying to understand what's going on. We are coming from the basic, deep ground of the Middle East. Times immemorial. So we are moving up from the past to the nowadays reality and trying to have a dialogue between what we see and what people have in mind. This maybe wouldn't actually provide the solutions, but this is kind of a must by which to start understanding what's going on and who is who. So basically, it's in tandem. And this is why I said from the beginning, you can't come up with one layer. The West is coming with one layer. Why ISIS is the problem? We're going to get rid of ISIS. Now let's see if there is no problems here. You're going to get much more problems because everybody's going to fight the other now. When ISIS was here, there was a common denominator. Now, nobody is going actually to let the other appropriate ISIS actually territory. So this is a recipe for an ongoing war, if you ask me. So, in that war, what you're going to have is a clash between primordial identities, the notion of Islamists, and some rational, I would say, states like Egypt, Jordan, and others who would like actually to have kind of a room under the sun and find a way by which to survive in that kind of a, you know, lunatic theater. So this is why you don't have, and you can't be equipped with, I would say, Western lens. You have to have a multifocal Middle Eastern lens by which to actually replace it whenever you are dealing with a different reality. Saudi Arabia, Iran is Iran, one time Syria, one time Iraq, Druze, Alawites, etc. So the more knowledgeable you are, and the more modest you are, the more closest you are to the reality. The more ignorant you are, the more slogans you use, the less close you are to what's going on.
Yes, what do you think would be the impact of the influx of Syrian refugees into Europe?
Well, I mean, these are miserable people, really. And I don't know, listen, you know, when France, for example, or Britain opened up their gates for let us say, to the one-time colonies. When it comes to Britain, it would be India, Afghanistan, Pakistan, etc. The Commonwealth, basically, and others. When it comes to France, we know it's the Maghreb and some portions of Africa. You know, the notion was pretty clear. What was the notion? I'm going to get people coming from there. Europe had then kind of a deficit when it comes to the labor power. And we can say that industrial, let us say, parties and economic companies in Europe then urged the government to bring in more and more people from there. Why? Economically speaking, that was highly needed and very profitable. What happened is that when it comes to the first Pakistani, Afghani, Indian, African, Maghribi, whatever, they could tell themselves that they made a very good deal. Why? They compared their realities with their place of origin at the same time. The son, the daughter, the grandson, the granddaughter, the great-grandson, the great-granddaughter were to become equal citizens. Because Britain, in that case, or France, or whatever, okay, that's just an example, was to become their homeland. Now, the fascinating and vicious circle of history made these people 20, 30, 40 years ago, after that, later on, asking themselves questions about their status and their position in their home. And since socio-economically or politically, they felt, let us say, I won't say second-class citizens, even if this is something that they definitely felt, but second drivers, let's put it metaphorically, that would be better. For many reasons. I don't, you know, I think as I told you, Laser actually talked to me about psychology and history. I think that this is a discipline which is very, very important in order to understand history. Because people are being motivated by, again, their whims, their dreams, their understandings about the other. And if you ask me, this is something which is very, very important here. I think that what we have to do is just to make sure that, again, as I said before, Europeans are coming full circle with their own legacy. Because what they have to ask themselves now, when Theresa May says, for example, enough is enough, what does that mean? Tell me you, what does that mean? Is she going actually to send security organ here to Bayswater or whatever in London and start searching actually the house of Muslims, or, you know, violating their civic rights, violating their civic rights? I'm not sure that she is able to do that. And we know that this thing by itself has to do with changing the constitution before. So I don't know what would happen with the, you know, in Eastern Europe they are not going to, you know, in Hungary, in Poland, they're going to break their bones. They won't go there. I tell that because this is the fact, I know it. They would go to France and Britain. Because France and Britain and Netherlands and Sweden and Norway, they would have to deal with their neoliberal ideology that tells them that they must be very generous in hosting these people. At least that was the case until recently. But then, to ask other questions, what does that mean? So Sweden, that has always known actually who is to be blamed for all atrocities in the world, that was Israel basically, now is coming up with something that's very rational. We are not going to let them in unless they have enough money. What is that? How compatible this is with what we call, you know, neoliberal ideology. So, you know, step by step, the West is coming up with some things that are shaking some basic notions of your, I would say, Magna Carta. And if, when it comes to that, this is very dangerous, because if you don't have enough courage to put it on the table and to turn it into kind of a national discourse, whatever the outcomes are, you're going to get Marine Le Pen, I dare say you're going to get Trump, you're going to get some others. Because these, I mean, they are not the problems, they are symptoms of the problems. Symptoms of the problems. So in my opinion, we are having here kind of a very, very delicate moment when it comes to the historical transition of state and societies. We are moving from the 20th century to the 21st. We can actually epitomize or depict or title that as the moving from one millennium or to the other. But what happened to be here is kind of an attack of the winning formula of the 20th century. And not surprisingly, the 21st century was to be opened up with the 9/11 atrocities. As if to say that what we are going to have in this decade is to just revisit some of the notions we thought in the 20th century that they are the ultimate truth. This is how I read it.
We have a lot of questions, so what I'd like to do is very succinctly, no speeches, very short questions. Larry and Michael will collect two.
No.
You know what?
Just answer me.
Okay, very good. So,
Very succinctly.
Hold on. Larry and Izzy will collect two.
Okay. So, point one, which is tongue-in-cheek, because of the all these complications you point out in the Middle East, maybe we should have taken the deal in Uganda. So that's just a, throw it out there.
Okay.
Be someplace else.
Izzy.
Wait, that was my question.
Okay.
That was a joke. The question is, can you extend, I really appreciated the theoretical perspective, the theoretical way of understanding identity. Does that also apply to the relationship between Jews in Israel and Jews in the diaspora in terms of this? Can you use the same theory to understand the conflict?
Izzy, we'll collect two questions.
Now?
Please.
Okay.
Answer. You're going to collect
Oh,
some questions and respond as well.
Simple question. Who's paying the bills for ISIS? And could it be Turkey?
Who's paying the bill for ISIS? You?
Yeah, I mean, financially.
It's going to be Turkey.
Well, it had been many of them, you know. I mean, because the vicious actually circle here is that if you are a staunch anti-Iranian, like the Saudis, and you have a lot of money, and you know that ISIS is a fierce rival of Iran, you would definitely actually use the back door in order to deliver money, because you think that this will help you out in making Iran be attacked actually constantly by a lunatic like ISIS. But when you have this money being channeled to ISIS, and then you hear ISIS saying, I'm going for Mecca too, it's not only Tehran. So here comes actually the, I would say the vertigo. Because now you don't know who is enemy and who is a friend. And basically what Turkey is trying to do, and this is another level, Turkey is the leader of what we call political Islam in the region. This is how it sees itself. Patron of Hamas, of Muslim Brothers in Egypt, champion of all the, let us say, people who are suffering in the region. No, this is a very cynical game. We know that. We know Erdogan. But basically, Erdogan is trying actually to wage a drive between moderates and Puritanists and go through that support of what we call actually Muslim Brothers wherever they are. Of course, Erdogan has an agenda of its own. He is anti-Iranian in terms of hegemony in the region, anti-Egyptian in terms of hegemony in the region, anti-Saudi in terms of hegemony in the region, and he has many, I would say, plans when it comes to one-time Syria, because he would like to get some slice of the territorial which were left by ISIS. So basically Turkey is always there. We know that because in East Jerusalem, for example, all these societies of Murabitun and Murabitat, people who are stick to their, let us say, one-time notion, religiously speaking, they are being financed by Turkey one way or the other. We know that. And Erdogan keeps playing actually the, I would say, very cunning game when you are doing double standards in the Middle East. Everybody, including Israel, doing double standards in this region because you can't go straight. You're going to meet the wall if you're going to go straight. So it is very tricky game. Now, what was the question? Well, yeah, sure. Diaspora. Well, this is a kind of, again, a wake-up. I guess we have 1 decade, maybe 2 decades, in order to create, I would say, a fresh bond of both Jews in Israel and diaspora or world Jewry. You know, Jews are, you know, and I have seen that in Latin America, in the States, whenever I meet with Jews all over the world, you know, the young generation has sort of a tendency or a trend of conversing, of intermarriage, and basically this is not the Jews sect, you know, who are even just to marry one of your own, you know, and just thereby secure your cultural boundaries forever. So I think that, again, what Israel should do is to create kind of a program which is very ambitious, very intensive, by which to spread the rumor all over the world, because it is almost the 11th hour. If we are going to antagonize them, if they are going to antagonize us, I'm talking about Israel and diaspora, all of us are going to lose. So I hope that both of us will know how to rebuild the bridge and get kind of a sense. And it's not that Jews have to make aliyah. I'm not talking about that. But I would really like actually Jews all over the world to get to the realization that Israel is their second home. Israel is their second home. Israel is not a burden. Like many Jews actually put it in front of me when I talk. You are making a lot of troubles for us. What does that mean? You know, we have to just talk, to listen to each other, and to create kind of a different understanding.
I'll just add on that note, I think it's also very imperative that diaspora communities look within at the issues, not only without them up to Israel as a source of problems or even solutions. Jason and Carlton, two quick questions. And we could hear.
Okay, so
anybody else I didn't mention?
So you said the two-state solution is not a realistic notion today. So what, in your opinion, is the solution?
Well, that's the 24 million question. Well, you know, I'm being attacked by Israelis when I'm saying that the two-state solution is null and void. So the next question was, so what is the alternative? You don't tell me that you don't have a solution. which is going to replace the two-state solution. I should show you my, my website, Facebook, whatever. I don't know. Somebody's running that for me, so I don't know even how to deal with that. But I have so many comments coming from so many people in Israel. Don't tell us that we are going to be left with no solution. There must be a solution. Well, once I was presenting in Canada, there was a mechanic engineer or something like that told me in the Q&A discussion, listen, every problem must have a solution. This is what my discipline told me. Frankly, I don't think so. I don't think so. It would be irresponsible for, to come up with kind of a solution and to promise. My late uncle, he was born in Iraq, then moved to Tehran, came to Israel, and then passed away in the States. I remember that when I was 5 years old, I remember that. I got from him a birthday present. He was in Israel at the time. And he was to provide me with a kind of an electric train. That was unheard of. The year was 1962. And the neighborhood was gathering in my room. Because everybody would like to see actually this miracle, this electric thing. What I remember is not the train itself. What I remember is what my uncle, my late uncle told me. He told me, look at this train. When you will be grown up, when you are going to become an adult, there will be no armies. You're going to use this train. And we're going to actually drive all over the Middle East, to Damascus, Beirut, Baghdad, Basra, where my parents came from. It could be a totally different world. Why do I actually recall that now? We moved actually 10 years ago from Ramat Gan to Herzliya in Israel. And we decided to get rid of 75% of the logistics of the language, of whatever. And I got this train, actually was there in the side of the basement, and I took it, it has a very sentiment value for me. I cleaned it up, and my grandson is 5 years old. And I asked myself, I found myself asking myself, if I'm going actually to provide him with that kind of present, would I tell him that when you will become an adult, there will be no wars. Israel is going actually to prosper, and we are going to have kind of tranquility all over the Middle East. I wish I could say that. But I can't do that. It would be irresponsible. I can tell you that it's my experience. I grew up with the notion that says that when I am becoming an adult, there will be no armies and no wars. I just believed what my uncle said. When I came to the Israeli IDF and I was in intelligence, I knew that it was wishful thinking. So I think it would be very, very responsible not to come up with kind of a very, very pretentious design, because it is not only up to you. It takes two, and in the Middle East, millions to tango. I'm not sure actually that there is the willingness, which is highly needed, of everybody to take part in this dance. So basically, I would be very, very, now, but in Hebrew you say, Patur belo chlu ifshar, so I can't leave it as if there is no solution. Here is my thing. I think that the Palestinians actually neglected and betrayed, I'm talking about the leaders, their population. They missed the train. And when Ehud Olmert, our former prime minister who just released from jail, just to tell you that this is a democracy, people do pay their price. Because I hear here and there that Israel is not only not a democracy, Israel is an apartheid state, a Nazi state, all these things. Well, again, the conspiracy theory, the unbearable easiness by which people actually, who hasn't got a clue about what's going on are, depicting and sloganing reality with so many nonsense, which just, it's a byproduct of an ignorance. But never mind, this is something we get used to. But the thing is that when it comes to what I'm trying actually to show you here, Ehud Olmert proposed a solution to Abu Mazen. I don't know, and I don't want to delve into too many details about that. But this is something Palestinians won't get from any future government in Israel, even if it's not the right government. This was a kind of an offer given by Ehud Olmert with which to have or to give up on sovereignty of Temple Mount, 5,000 refugees each year with their families for 10 years inside Israel, Palestinians, giving up on Israeli presence on the Jordan Valley, which is sort of a must if you cannot count on, and I guess that you won't blame me if I won't count on the world to make sure that Palestinians in their states are not going to actually launch an industry of dirty bombs or whatever. You won't blame me, I guess. Obama actually promised us when he didn't attack Bashar, rest assured, we have an agreement with the Russians by which to pull out chemical weaponry from Russia. That happened? So we can't count on nobody, basically. And we can't take the risk because we are so tiny a state. So tiny a state. That at times, actually, I'm talking to New Yorkers and just have to tell them that Israel is, so tiny that maybe they should actually just put in comparison New York itself and Israel. And so how tiny is it? And you are wrapped up with enemies. Not all of them. We have fine relationships with Egyptians, with Jordanians, not necessarily the people, because actually the people has to do with identity, culture, religion, and all that stuff. But when it comes to the ruling elites, okay? But this is something that you have to bear in mind. Palestinians miss the train, and the best scenario for everybody, sorry for putting it that way, is to have the Egyptians and the Jordanians take responsibility together with Israel and have kind of a confederacy. First of all, Jordanian, Palestinian in the West Bank. With Area C, if you are familiar with the ABC there, becoming kind of a joint industrial zone from which actually to give people opportunities, job opportunities, you know, Israel is a very strong state, not only in military and technology. We are a startup nation. Basically what we did, I mean, we have many defects, but you cannot ignore our advantages. What we managed to do in 70 years is Jean-Paul Sartre actually depicted as a miracle. So who am I actually to come up against that? So what I'm trying to say here is that, you know, we should, let's put it that way, we should try to develop something which goes out of the box. Because if you say one-state solution, two-state solution, that's the dichotomy. You know, whenever I go, I'm being asked, you are for one or two? There are two options. Well, there are so many options. People should come up with out-of-the-box thinking, and I can assure you that Palestinians are going to, and some of them are going to be really, really thrilled. Really, really thrilled, if that would be actually the case. Not all of them would like to have two-state solutions. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, many questions. So Carl,
Very quickly, thank you for
Quick response.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so very quickly. So my question kind of looks backward and forward. One, could you expound in whatever way you wish about what we've seen in the past, like you know, Le Pen's father used to sing Enoch Powell in the UK in '68, and then also Peter Griffith, who was saying, like, you want a nigger for your neighbor, vote later. Right? So there's been a lot of xenophobia here in the UK around colored immigration, what they call colored immigration. I wonder if you might contextualize that with your talk if at all possible. And then also looking forward, could you share any thoughts you may have? I know about the Obama administration being kind of like a rational actor. You know, nation states have their own reason, and they come from a particular, everyone has reason internally, right? But what about the Trump administration? Can you comment on any ideology or ideological perspective you see coming from the Trump administration? People say he doesn't have an ideology. Do you see anything?
I don't think that this guy actually has an ideology, and I don't think that he's being driven by an ideology. You know, when I was in Washington, D.C. in 2000, I asked my friend then, now he is a senator, what would be the change from Bill Clinton to the new incumbent, which was George Bush Jr. And he told me, do you have a pen and notebook? Start writing. And I said, he said, A, B, C. What is that? He said, ABC stands for anything but Clinton. This is what Bush is going to do. And in 2008, I actually contacted him from Israel saying, is Obama an ABB guy? Anything but exactly. And last time, actually, of course, for me, Trump is an ABB, anything but Obama. So, you know, in order to understand American policy, you have to have a cardiologist, actually, that you have, you know, kind of a real ups and downs when it comes to your policy. But frankly, you know, the Trump administration hasn't got a strategy in the Middle East. He just hits very, very strong when it comes to Afghanistan, Syria. Who knows what we're going to have with North Korea? Listen, I mean, the guy there is pretty lunatic. This is something that, you know, if I hear that he is going to channel some, you know, missiles on the boat, on the ships, actually to Japan, well, I mean, the Middle East is becoming a second in line now, and we have to see what's going on. I really think that if you are with me on that notion, and you would like actually to repair the damage in each society, this is something I told in the EU to Mogherini, when she asked me actually about, so what should be done? What should be done? You know, we have to just create kind of an educational revolution and make sure that people, 20 years from now on, are going to become grown-ups who know something which is very, very simple. Respect the otherness of the other. Respect the otherness of the other. This is my response.
Just a very brief question on the academic discourse. In the 1990s, mostly in relation to the Balkan Wars, there was a lot of, there was a body of scholarly works dealing with primordialism, Michael Ignatieff and others. Then with post-structuralism, this became kind of obsolete. But I really appreciate you bringing this into the analysis, because I believe that it is important for the analysis.
Well, I think I can dare say even that my teachers in Tel Aviv University were actually, followers of this idea.
And do you see this coming back into the discourse?
No, I think that what Edward Said came up with and his colleagues, this is kind of fashion.
Mm-hmm.
What I think people like Bernard Lewis and Fuad Ajami and others were dealing with is the real world. Real world. Because when you deal with people, human beings, you have to take into account the ingredients of which human beings are being comprised of. And human beings is this, that, this, and that. You know what human beings are. And no one would be a better analyst of human beings than human beings themselves. The thing is, whether you would like actually to stay aloof and come up with slogans, or you're gonna go penetrate the area in order to get kind of a sense of what culture is, what are the flavors, what are the tastes, what is the basically understanding when it comes to these and that people.
Okay.
So, and then Tom.
In long term, the democratic challenge will create absolutely a problem for Israeli society, Israeli national security. How you evaluate in the future aspects of possibility to keep Jewish characteristic of Israeli state and the democratic Jewish state possibility in 2030?
Great question. Because let's say that I am a right-wing guy who stands now on the right flank of this. This is kind of a schism you have in Israel, right and left. So what the right is going to say, if you are going to get rid of their territories, so to speak, we are going to get back to what Abba Eban, one-time foreign minister of Israel, actually depicted as the Auschwitz boundaries. So small, you cannot do that. So if you're going to hand them over, that would be a catastrophe. Now let me move to the left flank, and they come to the right. If you're going to keep it, as you said, you're going to end up with a catastrophe. So both are pretty sure that that would be a catastrophe. For different reasons. This is, by the way, a very Jewish psyche. Whatever you know, actually, we're going to end up with a catastrophe. Now, I guess you are right. And if we are going to have one-state solution, that would basically undermine what is most important is the Jewish character of the would-be state. This is why I said confederacy. Jordan, I don't know if Rami would accept that, but I wish the Egyptians would be partners in something big, big, that we can do together in Sinai and Gaza. This could be a huge industrial park. That could be a huge touristic scheme. We can have a different world. But again, Palestinians are stuck there, fighting each other, coming up with lunatic notions days and nights, complaining about the occupation, but actually when it comes to sitting with Abu Mazen, an average Israeli would tell you, okay, I'm going to have an agreement with Abu Mazen today. What if Hamas is going to take over the West Bank tomorrow? And we know that Hamas does not recognize the right of Israel to exist. So what is that? Are you going to play games with my future? The average Israeli won't accept that anymore. Won't accept it. We tried it in Oslo. We tried it in unilateral disengagement from Gaza. What we got actually after Gaza? Qassams, rockets over the south. We actually withdrew from Lebanon. We got this and that. We withdrew from West Bank. We got this and that. What I'm trying to tell you is that, you know, I'm not even do not talk about the righteous part. I'm not going to blame the Palestinians. I'm just giving you what most Israelis had in mind. This is, they have in mind. This is what counts. Because people are referring to reality as what it should be. This is what people do in the academia all over the world. They are coming up with theories of what should be. Guys, we have to deal with what we have on the ground and what people think about that. And this is where we have to just have a point of departure. I agree with you, but confederacy with something that is definitely a right solution.
So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to collect, there's 3 remaining questions, I'm going to collect them, and we have just a few minutes to wrap up. So Thomas, Daniel, and Rami, very succinct questions, and then we'll let Uzi respond.
My question was already asked.
Okay,
so
okay.
I resign.
Thank you.
My question is very simply, what can we know about the relationship between the Muslim world and China and or North Korea?
I mean, that's very interesting because we had before we came here, we had a delegation coming from China. Any Chinese here? Yeah. And, you know, they asked me the same question. And, you know, this was the first time when Chinese are coming up with something, at least in Tel Aviv University, which relates to their own country and their own anxiety. And they asked me about the Uyghurs, in China. And this is actually kind of a huge section. Of course, in China, it's just, I don't know how many percent, what is the percentage, but, you know, in China, 1% makes kind of people by themselves. We used to have, we opened up in Beijing kind of an innovative center of Tel Aviv University in Beijing. And you know, I was the keynote speaker there, and I just welcomed the Chinese. It was in Beijing, and I said, you and us together makes the greatest nation in the world, actually, when it comes to people. But I have to tell you that when it comes to that, and this is very, very important, because even the Chinese, I guess these days, are pretty, let us say, anxious about the infiltration of such, let us say, ideas to... I was bewildered to find that in Japan, I don't know, are there Muslims?
There are.
I just asked them actually what, and they said that they just make sure that there are restrictions, and I don't think that this should be the case. But there are states who are that anxious about that. They got that. But remember, they do not hold the Western neoliberal ideology. They could do things in kind of a very strict and blunt way. And unfortunately, I'm not actually in favor of that kind of an ideology. But what they can do, actually, democracies cannot. So when it comes to democracy, the challenge is much more complicated.
I remember we traveled to China 10 years ago, 9 years ago, and we were warning the Chinese government about the rise of political Islam.
No, I mean, they definitely are worried about that. They are worried about that, and this is something that... and by the way, the Philippines have been, I mean, some islands actually have been taken captive by ISIS. Yeah.
Prof, I have a comment, not position, but I want to get your opinion about it. I heard from many Palestinian people that the current situation, even between Fatah and Hamas, both of them are not looking for any peace, real peace. because they are using this as a good business for them to get billions of dollars from different countries. So really, that I got from many Palestinians, but
Me too.
I don't like to refer to any names here because they are famous.
No, there's no need.
They tell me the current situation is considered a big business to fight even Hamas, not only Hamas, because they are playing the role of victims all the time and to get sympathized from other countries, Muslim, European Union, United States. So I don't think the state solution or one solution or any solution will be good for Fatah Hamas, and they are.
I agree with you. But you know, this is a different world. Many young Palestinians are having that in mind. We were betrayed by our leadership. And this is why we can't actually stick to the leadership anymore. You have the people, actually in the virtual world, people, and they are being tempted by so many ideologies. And I think that that wouldn't take a long time before Abu Mazen and others are going actually to find that there is a price for their betrayal of the Palestinian people. And I think, really, that what you said leaves us with 3 states for 2 peoples. Have you heard this slogan? So Abu Mazen is being supported by Israel because he is being afraid to be toppled by the Hamas. Without Israel, Abu Mazen cannot actually stay on in the West Bank. Hamas would like actually to penetrate the West Bank and to bring in ideology, a poisoned ideology, in order to get all these things happen, but the Israeli security organs won't let them do that. At the same time, people are suffering in Gaza. 2 million people almost have kind of a miserable life. And who is to be blamed for that? Of course, Israel, not the Hamas. Hamas is a mafia, a mob. And they took the money for themselves, money that came from the quartet and from many, many plans.
Hamas not only threat for Israel, Hamas make a big threat over our national security in Egypt. Because they have 1,000 of cannons between the border of Sinai and
they took the money that was brought in by the quartet and they built tanks. And what was their slogan? They're always a light in the end of the tunnel. Not this tunnel actually, which, so if you come to think of that, you know, we have a real complicated situation. What I tried actually to bring in, with all respect, I say just some modesty, because I mean the situation is so fragmented that when I actually, and I'm a very, very nice and generous person, but I can get pissed off when I hear that somebody is coming up from there with a formula to solve all the problems of the Middle East. It's very interesting to see now when you are inquiring into that, you see that the guy knows nothing almost. He's just coming up with kind of a notion that was fully implemented in the Tahiti or in Latin America once, and he thinks that this formula could work here. This is something that is very, very artificial, and I hope that we just manage to make some sense about the Middle Eastern eventualities.
Thank you, Uzi. Thank you very much for your insights. We'll get to hear you again tomorrow morning.